Madagascar is the fourth largest island on Earth. 28 million people. DNA traces them all to one boat. Madagascar sits in the Indian Ocean off the southeast coast of Africa. Geographically, it belongs to Africa. The island separated from the Indian subcontinent roughly 88 million years ago. Its wildlife evolved in total isolation. Lemurs, chameleons, and baobabs found nowhere else on Earth. But the first humans came from the last place expected. But the people who first settled it did not come from Africa. They came from the opposite side of the Indian Ocean, from Borneo, over 6,000 kilometers away. Borneo is in Southeast Asia, the third largest island in the world, separated from Madagascar by the entire Indian Ocean. For decades, linguists noticed something strange. The Malagasy language did not sound African at all. The Malagasy language belongs to the Austronesian family. Its closest living relative is the Mayanyan language, spoken by river communities in southern Borneo. The vocabulary overlap is unmistakable. Words for rice, canoe, and family are nearly identical across the two languages. But language alone cannot prove a migration. People adopt new languages through trade and conquest without ever moving. The question required genetics. Even the grammatical structures match. Verb placement, pronoun systems, and counting methods are shared across the two languages. The Austronesian language family contains over 1,200 living languages spread across half the globe. Malagasy is the only one ever spoken west of the Indian Ocean. In 2012, a team led by geneticist Murray Cox published results that stunned the field. Cox and his team analyzed mitochondrial DNA from over 260 Malagasy individuals across the island's diverse ethnic groups. The mitochondrial DNA told a clear story. Roughly half of the Malagasy maternal lineages traced directly to Southeast Asia. The other half came from East Africa, the Bantu expansion. But the African lineages arrived later. Cox's statistical model calculated the founding maternal population. The number that came back shocked everyone who read the paper. Approximately 30 women. The entire founding population of Madagascar traced to roughly 30 Indonesian mothers. 30 women implies a total founding group of perhaps 60 to 90 people. Men, women, and possibly children. That is one of the most extreme founding bottlenecks ever documented for a major island population. An entire nation built from fewer than 100 people. By comparison, Iceland was founded by roughly 400 Norse settlers, New Zealand by 70 to 90 Polynesians. Madagascar's bottleneck is the most extreme. The model was clear. Modern Malagasy mitochondrial diversity could only trace to approximately 30 distinct maternal lineages. The confidence interval was remarkably tight, between 24 and 36 founding women, not hundreds, not thousands, just dozens. These people crossed 6,500 kilometers of open ocean in outrigger canoes. Built for deep water, the Austronesian peoples were the greatest ocean navigators in human history. They colonized every habitable island in the Pacific. Madagascar was their furthest western voyage. But here is where it gets complicated. 30 women is not just a small number. It is suspiciously small. A planned colonization fleet would have carried hundreds of people. 30 women suggests something went wrong. One hypothesis is that a larger fleet set out from Borneo and most vessels were lost during the crossing. Only 1 or 2 canoes survived to reach Madagascar. The Indian Ocean crossing is one of the most dangerous maritime passages on Earth. Monsoon waves exceed 10 meters. Modern sailing analysis suggests the voyagers likely followed the monsoon trade winds, a journey that would have taken months even under ideal conditions. Austronesian navigators use star positions, wave patterns, and bird flight paths to navigate without instruments. Skills passed orally across generations. Modern experimental voyages have proven these vessels could make the crossing. The boats were capable. The risk was the question. But there is a second hypothesis, and it changes the story entirely. Some researchers argue the voyage was not direct. The Austronesians may have island hopped through established trade networks. Archaeological evidence of Austronesian trade goods has been found along the East African coast. They were already trading in the western Indian Ocean before settling Madagascar. If settlers came through established trade routes, the small founding number makes more sense. Deliberate colonization. Isotope analysis of the earliest archaeological remains on Madagascar confirms the founding population ate a Southeast Asian diet: rice, fish, and tropical fruit. They brought their food crops with them. Rice cultivation in Madagascar is genetically traced to Indonesian varieties, not African ones. Madagascar's central highland rice paddies look identical to those in Southeast Asia. The technique traveled with settlers. The genetic signature of Malagasy rice matches varieties from Borneo precisely. These plants crossed the ocean on those same canoes. Not just rice, bananas, taro, and coconuts in Madagascar also traced to Southeast Asian varieties. An entire agricultural kit. The settlers did not arrive empty-handed. They carried seed stocks, root cuttings, and the knowledge to farm a tropical island from scratch. Every founding crop tells the same story, carried as seeds and cuttings, planted in unfamiliar soil, still growing. The earliest archaeological sites on Madagascar date to the 9th century CE, but the genetic clock differs. The mitochondrial DNA molecular clock estimates the founding event occurred around 800 to 1200 CE, a tight window of roughly 400 years. That timing overlaps with the height of Austronesian maritime expansion. These voyagers were part of a larger movement. The Austronesian expansion began in Taiwan around 5,000 years ago. Over millennia, they reached every corner of the Pacific. Madagascar was the final destination, the western edge of the greatest maritime migration in human history. 6,500 kilometers from Borneo to the African coast. While Polynesians sailed east to Easter Island and New Zealand, a smaller group turned west into the Indian Ocean. Against the prevailing currents, the westward route was harder, fewer islands for resupply, longer open water crossings, the boldest sailors of their era. But the founding population did not remain isolated. Within centuries, a second wave of settlers arrived. Modern Malagasy genomes show roughly equal contributions from Southeast Asian and African ancestry. The two populations merge. The admixture pattern is not uniform. Highland Malagasy populations retain more Southeast Asian ancestry. Coastal groups show stronger African genetic contributions. The Merina of the Central Highlands carry the strongest Indonesian genetic signal. The Sakalava of the western coast show the highest African contribution. The pattern suggests Indonesian settlers established themselves in the highlands. Later African arrivals settled along the coast. The Highland Merina people physically resemble Southeast Asians more than East Africans. Lighter skin, straight, dark hair, epicanthic eye folds. The physical diversity across Madagascar's 18 ethnic groups reflects the genetic admixture gradient. Indonesian founding stock blended with later African arrivals over centuries, and the genetic evidence reveals something else. The African admixture came primarily from Bantu-speaking East African populations. The Bantu expansion brought ironworking, cattle herding, and new crops to Madagascar. Two cultures merged into something new. Iron tools appeared in Madagascar's archaeological record only after the African contact period. The founding Austronesians had brought stone and wood technology. Indonesian farming merged with African iron, working to create a uniquely productive culture. Neither group thrived as well alone. Zebu cattle from Africa, rice paddies from Indonesia, the Malagasy language from Borneo. The culture is a fusion. But the founding DNA came from one direction. Even the Malagasy practice of ancestor veneration and secondary burial closely parallels traditions still practiced in Indonesia today. The raised wooden houses with steep pointed roofs are closer to Borneo longhouses than any African tradition. Cox's finding has been replicated multiple times. The founding bottleneck of approximately 30 maternal lineages is now considered established science. Independent studies using different genetic markers and larger sample sizes arrived at the same conclusion. The number holds. 3 separate research teams, 3 different methodologies, the same answer. Approximately 30 founding women from Southeast Asia, 28 million people, 18 ethnic groups, one of the most genetically and culturally diverse island populations on Earth. all traced to a handful of canoe voyagers from Borneo. The descendants of those 30 women still cook rice as their ancestors did, still sail outrigger canoes. The art, the architecture, the burial practices, the music, cultural DNA that survived 6,500 kilometers of ocean and 1,000 years of change. The valiha, Madagascar's national instrument, is a bamboo tube zither. Identical instruments are still played across Indonesia and the Philippines, a musical tradition that crossed the Indian Ocean and survived intact for 1,200 years. The melody changed, the instrument did not. What makes this discovery extraordinary is the scale of the disproportion. 30 women, 28 million descendants. Every person in this city, in every village across the island, carries genetic markers from those founding Austronesian voyagers. Modern Malagasy citizens who take commercial DNA tests consistently discover Southeast Asian ancestry they never expected. The founding signal is universal. In every face in this market, the genetic echo of those 30 Bornean women persists. Always present. The genetic bottleneck should have produced devastating inbreeding effects. But the rapid addition of African genetic diversity within centuries prevented a population collapse. Modern Malagasy genetic diversity is actually higher than many larger island populations. The African admixture rescued the gene pool from the Indonesian bottleneck. Geneticists now cite Madagascar as one of the clearest examples of how admixture from a second source population can rescue genetic diversity after a severe bottleneck. The dual ancestry gave Madagascar a unique genetic profile, neither fully Asian nor fully African, found nowhere else. The outrigger canoe is still used daily along the Malagasy coast. The same design from 1,200 years ago. One boat, 30 mothers, an island nation. The math is extraordinary, but the DNA leaves no room for doubt. 6,500 kilometers of open ocean, crossed in wooden canoes with woven sails, by people who brought their language, their rice, and their children. And somewhere in the genetic code of 28 million living people is the signature of that one extraordinary voyage. If you enjoy evidence-based stories where genetics rewrites what we thought we knew about human migration, subscribe. The next episode traces another impossible voyage. Drop a comment. Could you cross an ocean in a wooden canoe with 30 people and build a nation? 30 women, one canoe, an entire island built from courage, rice seeds, and the open sea. The ocean remembers nothing, but the DNA remembers everything. Somewhere on the far side of that horizon, 1,200 years ago, 30 women climbed into a canoe. They never came back. From Borneo, across the ocean, to build a world.